Thank you so much for coming this afternoon to this debate about influencer marketing, which I think will be not only informative, but maybe uncomfortable, but definitely thought-provoking. I'm Omar Oakes. I'm a journalist and commentator, and I suppose from time to time a stirrer of industry pots. You may know my work. I was most recently editor of The Media Leader, formerly at Campaign magazine, and I'm now a freelance writer and consultant. I don't have my lanyard on me, but I've actually just launched a consultancy called Oomph, where I help marketing and media companies cut through the noise. Something which I suppose we might be talking a little bit about today, noise, not anything to do with ChatGPT. Influencer marketing is very important. I'm delighted to be asked to chaired this debate by the IPA. Is influencer advertising are influencers too influential in advertising? You'll have all, hands up if you've seen the Netflix show Adolescence. If you haven't, you're in a minority. It only launched a month ago on Netflix, and already it made UK TV history as the most watched streaming show, more than anything BBC, ITV, Channel 4 were putting out that week. And why is that? Well, we've hit a cultural moment that's been building for some time, where people are very concerned about smartphone usage, particularly among young people. I think many of us watching that show might have empathised with some of those children who are caught in this feedback loop of needing to endlessly perform. By the way, you can add me to LinkedIn. That'd be great if you could do that by the end of the hour. But influencer, I mean, I've been in this industry for 10 years, and I think in 2015, when I first started working at Campaign, I don't think we were talking about influencers, but they've been around for a while. You can go back to Eleanor Roosevelt, the former First Lady of the US. David Ogilvy was paying her after she left the White House to do ads for Unilever, what is now Unilever margarine. So influencers have been around for a long time, but we've now got this huge ecosystem where it's now mainstream. Look at Cannes Lions last year, where the first time they launched the Lions creators. Look at the major acquisitions that have been happening in the agency space, WPP, Publicis, Stagwell, buying influencer companies. You may have seen this morning, the WPA put out news that influencer marketing is due to grow again this year. 75% of brand marketers are now using influencer agencies. So the question is it becoming too influential? Have we gone past the point of no return? Joining me is, you will no doubt see very soon, an expert, formidable panel. To begin, arguing for the motion, is influencer advertising too influential, is Sabrina Francis, who is strategy partner at the 7 Stars. Sabrina.
Thank you. Now let's get one thing straight. Influencers are not the enemy. We're not saying that they don't belong in the marketing mix. Heck, they can talk about a lipstick for weeks and make you feel like your life depends on it. But this debate isn't about whether influencers work. It's about whether they have too much power over marketing budgets, brands, and even culture. And yes, we have to talk about culture, because advertising decides who gets heard, what gets seen, and where the money flows. And right now, too much of that money is flowing to people whose CVs include hot girl walks and get ready with me videos. For a group that we believe is not as effective, safe, or regulated as other marketing channels, that's a serious problem. Now let's start with one thing that keeps brands alive: trust. Trust builds brands, trust drives sales, trust creates icons. And yet, brands are throwing money at influencers like there's no tomorrow, even though only 22% of people actually trust them. I'll say that again for the people in the back. Only 22%, according to a survey against 4,000 respondents. We are funneling billions into people that the majority of consumers actually don't genuinely even believe. It's like handing your house keys to a burglar and just hoping for the best. Advertising, though, has been built on accountability, years of ad standards and legal teams and compliance. But influencer marketing is like the Wild West. One minute you could be flogged a lipstick, the next they're launching a shady NFT that steals all your savings. And actually, if you think I'm exaggerating, and of course there's going to be some talk of examples today, but Logan Paul, Crypto Zoo, thousands of people were scammed. Even right now, Love Island contestants are in deep, hot water, and not the spa kind, the criminal kind, for pushing really high-risk financial schemes to millions of followers. It turns out that if 80% of your customers actually lose money, you might end up trading that designer wardrobe for a prison uniform. So do we still think the influencers are safe hands for our influencer plans, for our marketing plans? Brands used to be rock stars, but now they're becoming a bit like groupies, chasing trends when they should be actually setting them. We're letting strategies be dictated by vibes and sound bites, but where's the control? Where's the vision and the leadership? Remember, Nike built this entire empire with a singular, consistent brand story. Apple changed the world through bold, long-term positioning. And now some brands are handing their entire narrative over to someone who just went viral for owning a pink Stanley Cup. Listen, a TV network doesn't disappear overnight. A news outlet doesn't vanish after one scandal. But an influencer can go rogue in an instant. Think about Elle Darby's racist tweets. Brands had to drop her within hours. Fire Festival. Everyone's probably seen what happened there. Thousands misled. But these aren't just outliers. They're proof that when brands put too much power into the hands of individuals with no oversight, it backfires. So let's bring it back to the sexy topic of effectiveness, also known as do they actually bloody work? Professor Felipe Thomas from Oxford Uni has spent his entire career looking at marketing effectiveness, and his latest study ranks 23 media channels by their influence on people across multiple categories. Influencers never rank higher than 14th. That means that TV, print, outdoor still beat them. And I can circulate the data if you need the receipts. Turns out influencers just aren't as influential as we think. So why are we funneling more marketing spend their way? Now, the opposition, who are busy whispering over there, whispering, might say, oh, but what about traditional paid media? It's all fragmenting and it's all... I don't actually think that's what they sound like. But if fragmentation is a concern, more influencers mean more risk, more chaos, less accountability. Your brand message isn't just in one place. It's being sliced and diced and TikTok stitched into oblivion. Meanwhile, traditional media remains a constant. Sure, it's evolving, but trust, structure, and credibility still remains. So let's do a quick fact check, right? Only 22% of people genuinely trust influencers. Influencer marketing ranks across the weakest channels for influence. And yet brands are talking about investing up to 50% of their budgets into them. Just make it make sense. This house believes that influencers are too influential. They should have a role in our plans, but they shouldn't be the plan. We've started mistaking borrowed influence for brand building, hype for strategy, but trust, regulation, reliable measurement, and long-term thinking still matter. So let's reset the balance and take the power back. Thank you.
Yeah.
I told you it was going to be good, didn't I? Thank you so much. It's going to be 5 minutes from proposers for the motion and opposers to the motion. And at the end, towards the end, you have the opportunity to briefly make some comments, not questions, but comments on what you think. I should have asked you before, hopefully you're not too swayed by Sabrina just now, to have a show of hands. But I think in the interest of fairness, we'll have a show of hands after our first speaker talks. So no pressure, Tom. So sorry about that. So Tom, from Billion Dollar Boy.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Would love to know where those stats are from, Sabrina. I think they're pretty doubtful. I'm Tom. I'm from Billion Dollar Boy. We are an influencer marketing first agency, or creative first agency, as we would call it, and we've been in the space since 2014, so 11 years within the space, to Omar's point earlier on it being a relatively young media, but one that's been around for a little bit of time already too. Before I go into sort of my key points, I just want to address a couple of things that Sabrina levelled. there were comments about influencers in general kind of bucketing everyone together. And I think that what a lot of people in our space say and see is that the use of influencer is often in a dated and reductive fashion. The space is incredibly broad. If you think about anyone who you come across on social media who's built a following, they fit into lots of different profiles. They're not just entirely Love Island stars. You have new people who are building and constructing businesses. You have advocates like Lucy Edwards, who's a blind creator who, with her work with Procter & Gamble, convinced them to put NaviLens codes on every single bottle of shampoo and conditioner that they produce, which is an incredibly effective and activation, enabling people to engage with their products in a much more meaningful and positive way. And that would never have happened without Lucy's involvement. And there are countless other examples, so I just wanted to say that. It's not to say that there aren't bad actors, but there are bad actors in every industry. And to level that at this industry and consistently beat that drum is not paying enough attention to the diversity within it. You also talked about it not being well regulated. I completely counter that. I'm sure that Raoul would too, as would anyone who is engaged in this space. There are well-established regulations in pretty much every market in which creator marketing exists. And actually, oftentimes, creators are held to a higher standard than celebrities. Look at the profile of a creator that you follow, then go and look at a profile of someone like David Beckham, who has countless adverts on his social media profiles, but not one single hashtag ad. Just saying. So, setting the stage. To answer the question, from our perspective, are influencers too influential in advertising? I'd like you to all think about your own screen time. What platforms are you on? What do you actually watch? I bet, like me, you spend a lot of your time when you're consuming content on your phone on social platforms or entertainment platforms. TikTok now call themselves an entertainment platform, not a social. I think probably like me, you're more likely than not to skip actual ad units and actually stop on content that is entertaining and relevant. This content is often made by creators who've built their reputation, built that following through reputation for creative and innovative content. So what's happening? Putting it bluntly, very few people seek out or want to watch an uninterruptible cinematic ad showing your latest car drive around the streets of a nondescript city. People aren't interested in receiving one big blunt brand message in one format and with multiple cut downs, and yet we're still talking about it, and we're still doing it. They want nuance and value, and if they're to reward us with their attention. Research, not just from social platforms or from businesses like Billion Dollar Boy, such as the IPA's own Effectiveness 3.0 study, shows that we're already in an era of bespoke advertising where people reward personalization with their attention. It's our view that the most effective way to capitalize on this is partnering with and taking learnings from creators. The biggest brands in the world know this and have structured their entire marketing teams to adapt. Just look at L'Oreal and even Unilever's announcement just 2 weeks ago. If you're a brand in the room and you've not considered doing the same, why is that? And are you going to be left behind?
30 seconds, Tom.
Furthermore, influencers drive innovation. They're cultural engineers. They understand the platform mechanics better than anyone else. And that's incredibly valuable to us as advertisers and marketers. Furthermore, they drive full funnel impact. People ask where they sit in the funnel. Frankly, creator-powered content is effective in all parts, from awareness to conversion and even loyalty. To that very point, social commerce is rising exponentially.
Time to wrap up.
And I will wrap up imminently. Thank you, Omar.
Welcome.
Modern brands are built in digital, not in spite of it. It's not about replacing brand principles, but evolving our practices, as John Hegarty put it. Practices change, principles endure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well argued. Please, let's take the temperature of the room. Before you walked in and heard these very convincing arguments just now, hands up, who agrees with the motion? Are influencers too influential?
Yeah. Woo.
Interesting.
Higher.
Interesting.
Higher.
Yeah.
No pressure, Susie. We're going to see if that changes now. Now, arguing for the motion, Susie Barker, who is strategy partner at AMV BBDO.
All right. Thank you, guys. I'm going to sit because we're amongst friends, right? Except that girls rule and boys drool. So here we go, billion-dollar boy. It's Susie Money Barker. So here we go. I think, yes. I mean, listen, I work in advertising, right? We have clients that use influencers, right? And generally, when we talk about the ways in which they're beneficial to your platform, I'm going to talk about the positive for a minute. We talk a lot about kind of the reach they get, the relevance they bring, the authenticity, the personalization, and I think those are definitely true. But in thinking about how we defend ourselves to say influencers are too influential, I want to talk about the dark side of those metrics. And I think it's really important to cite specific examples in this conversation because there's a lot of dark shit happening with influencers that I think we should all be aware of as we think about how we use them moving forward. So the first point I want to make is back to reach, right? And so again, people are going to say, okay, great, you need to use an influencer because we need more reach on this ad or this product, right? And I think reach isn't always a good thing. And sometimes reach has a dark effect. I am maybe one of the Americans in the room, so I'm going to cite a specific example. But I think in the macro context of influencers, Donald Trump and Elon Musk are influencers. And there's a lot of evidence to cite that sometimes they're inciting behaviors or things that maybe they shouldn't be. For example, the January 6th storm of the Capitol, which you could say there's a lot of evidence that leads Donald Trump to inciting people to do. That's a negative side of influence, right? I think if you bring it back to advertising for a minute, I think if you guys are familiar with the YouTuber Sinet, he basically went on and tried to advertise a PlayStation 5 giveaway. And he told everyone to meet him in New York City, and he incited a riot of people coming to get the PlayStation 5. There are dark effects when you give too many people a voice. I don't always think, giving influencers that reach is always a negative, dangerous consequence or violent one for that matter. But I think sometimes there's who we're giving the right voice to. Another big topic, right, is the voice of kids. So often kids have become successful influencers, the kids who are on there unboxing things or trying to tell their parents what to do and whatnot. I think there's a risk of bringing kids into this at this point. I don't think that's a great idea for us to suddenly think like, oh wow, this kid can't even read, but now all of a sudden he's selling products. I think we're trying to commercialize people too soon and sometimes the wrong people. And I think, too, when we go back to reach, I think often, again, if I'm putting a stat in a deck, it's like, oh, wow, hey, this reached 10 million people. Was it effective? I'm not sure. I think there's a real difference between the number of people you reach and the actual effectiveness. It comes back to the intent of what you were doing. So I just wanted to say reach can have a dark side. The second thing I want to mention is that authenticity has a slippery slope as well. And I think there's a lot happening with influencers that's not authentic. So I want to talk about my favorite TV show right now, which is on Hulu. Hopefully one of you have watched it, but it's The Secret Lives of Mormon Moms. Anyone? Yes? Okay, great. So very popular, and if you're not familiar, there's these women, and they claim that they started Mom Talk, and they got a TV show out of it. And as you engage, you realize that they're doing a lot of non-Mormon-like activity. They're having sex, they're going to parties, all of this sacrificial stuff. And all of a sudden, they've become the voices of the Mormon community. Whereas they're actually not representing the Mormon community maybe the best way possible or the best way that Mormons believe them to. But we gave them a voice and they took it, and now they're one voice for a big community. And I think speaking of moms, there's another mom out there called Ballerina Farm. Anyone familiar with her? And she's what you call a trad wife, right? And for those of you that don't know, it's a traditional wife. And she used her platform to talk about her organic farming, and she makes butter every morning, and she's got like 12 kids, and that's awesome. But there was a lot of talk about how authentic she is, because although she's living this very traditional life, we then found out that she's married to the CEO of JetBlue's son, which is one of the largest airlines in the US. So are you being authentic in what you're doing? ? And I think we'd be remiss to not mention, of course, the Netflix documentary Apple Cider Vinegar, if any of you have seen that. And I think there you see this woman, Belle Gibson, who basically told all of her followers for many years that she was dying of cancer. And she started all of these products to help people be cancer-free and eat nutritiously. And then they found out that she never had cancer in the first place. And people were actually making health decisions based on what this one woman was saying. So I think that's another point to say authenticity with influencers can be a very slippery slope, and it's really hard to know who to trust, back to one of your original points.
30 seconds.
Oh, shoot. OK. I think with personalization and thinking about being hoodwinked, too, I think there's a lot out there about health trends like Ozempic. There's a lot with K-pop stars that are promoting plastic surgery. There's a dangerous slope when you get into the way people are talking about health. I'm really into this one influencer. All of a sudden, her hair became beautiful. She's promoting these pills. And then I asked my dermatologist about them. My dermatologist was like, do not take that. You just don't know what these people are thinking. And I also think the tropes in which influencers are using, you're catching on quite quickly. If you follow any influencers, often they use an AMA, Ask Me Anything. And I've noticed they'll answer 2 questions maybe about their personal life. And usually on their 3rd or 4th answer, it's them slamming a product. I think people are being smarter and seeing through the lines of what these influencers are saying. And I think it's up to influencers to be more creative about how they come back. But I just want to bring up that influencers are becoming too influential. It's a dark slope, and girls rule, boys drool.
Thank you very much, Susan. And finally, to my immediate right, arguing against the motion, we have Rahul Titus, who is Global Head of Influence at the agency Ogilvy.
Thank you very much. I think, firstly, what's wrong with hot girl walks, pink Stanley Cups, and trad wives? I mean, they define culture as we know it today. There's nothing wrong with it. Also, there's dark shit happening in every other marketing channel as well. I mean, why are we picking on influencer marketing? I'm just going to put that out there. Also, how amazing that the Mormon wives got a TV show out of dancing on TikTok. That is the creator economy in full motion, and I am, all here for it. A few bad actors don't define our industry, and I can't stress that enough. There's hundreds of millions of creators in the world. 15 examples that you pointed out don't actually define the whole industry. That's going to happen in any industry we work in. I think the one fundamental truth that has defined my career, which has been 14 years in influencer marketing, is that people trust people more than they trust brand. That is something that has never changed. That is basically why brands and marketers are quadrupling their budget in influencer marketing. Tom mentioned L'Oreal. They work with 72,000 creators in the UK alone. Unilever going to spend about 50% of their budget on influencer marketing is a sign of things that are happening right now. It's not a sign of things to come. That's happening right now, today. Why? Because authenticity is something that I don't think a lot of other disciplines bring to the level that influencer marketing actually brings in, right? It's not a nice to have, it's an absolute need to have. If you're a marketer today and you're not doing influencer marketing, what are you doing? Like, are you still making TV ads and just putting it on TV that nobody's watching? I mean, it just absolutely baffles me. I'm sorry to say that. But I do want to focus on the creative side of of this debate for a second. So I do work at Ogilvy, which is the world's largest influencer agency, but we also happen to do creative. We know creative. And then creative allows, creators basically allow us to move at the speed of culture. And this is really important. That's why we embrace creators at Ogilvy. When Ogilvy delivered Turn Your Back for Dow, a Grand Prix winner for creativity and effectiveness, we got the brief at 7 a.m. We were live in 8 markets in less than 24 hours. Can traditional advertising and production do that? Absolutely not. If you don't jump on a trend in less than 24 hours on TikTok, there's no point doing it, which is what influencers and creators really let us do. We also run Coke. So for Coke, we basically hyper-personalize at scale. So for Coke Meals, which is the largest revenue driver for Coke, by the way, a very simple concept. A Coke and a meal is a recipe for magic. We could easily do a TV ad and put that in all our markets and say, this works. What we did instead is work with thousands of creators to hyper-personalize that message across every single market. A Coke and a pasta in Italy or a Coke and biryani in India, all basically amplified at scale. We can't do that with TV and production or traditional advertising. Let's talk about our award-winning campaign for the Super Bowl last year for L'Oreal and CeraVe with Michael Cera. Most of our metrics, including reach, awareness, fame, all of that came from the work we did with creators before we actually launched a Super Bowl ad. Again, creators redefining how we do Super Bowl ads. Again, a Grand Prix winner from last year. For Google Pixel, our whole creative vision is to act like creators, landing in culture, helping brands really with that social transformation. So in this case, we're testing out creative with creators and then boosting it in paid media, as opposed to just putting everything into paid and then seeing what actually sticks. A much more efficient and effective system as a whole. So for me, this is not even an argument, to be honest. Creators are the future. If advertisers embrace creators, it's magic. I've seen that happen. Ogilvy is a proof point in the fact that if you can go creative first, culture-driven, creator-powered campaigns, that model works. And that's absolutely the right way forward. I'll stop at that.
Fantastic. He's coming under time. Very well argued, both sides. I'm keen to spend a few minutes just seeing what the audience thinks, if anything. These are not questions for the audience, but if you have any comments about what you've heard today, if you want to respond to, or if something's been missed that you want to add to the debate, there's a couple of people with microphones going around. Please stick up your hand and catch my eye. Over here first.
I'm Esme. I run the influence at Vayner for EMEA, and I used to run it globally for Mindshare, so it's slightly biased. But I'm actually going to disagree with kind of all of you on stage and say that I don't think that you have the right to say whether influencers are too influential. I think if we think about influence as a development of society sharing information and communities forming online, social media is just the current expression of that. So you don't get a right to come in and say that they are too much or too little or they're not enough or we should invest more or less. I think that we don't get to rip down those, ancient market stalls and change the way that people are sharing information with each other. We just get to show up in the right space. I think consumers are existing and have democratically elected leaders within those communities to share their opinions and share their perspectives. We talk about giving people voices. That's a democratically elected person and key opinion leader within that community. So it's the people who are giving people that voice. What the people in this room need to know about is how are we investing in that and how do we keep ourselves accountable to influence for good and not for bad.
I agree.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Chloe. Great discussion today. I think the question we're asking around are influencers too influential is maybe the wrong question. I think we're in a room with a lot of people that have a lot of influence and it says paid partnership. How many people can say with their chest that they are actually partnering with that influencer and building a long-term relationship with them, guiding them through the journey, or is it just a paid ad that's left at that door? And that's the impact that you're actually describing, is that we're not actually partnering. I don't work in this industry at all, but I've heard a talk right before this where they're encouraging people to, partner with influencers and incorporate them into your brand strategy. But I think what we need to look at is the partnership. How are you guiding them? How are you building relationships with them? How are you nurturing them outside of the ad and building that longevity in that relationship? So it's really just a food for thought.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Delicious. Thank you. Please, here.
I think we're also avoiding the issue of the evolution of the influencer. Gone are the days of the, I've been on a reality TV show, therefore I'm an influencer, I get loads of money. And as you were talking about, we're talking about creators now. We're not talking about influencers as such. So I think there is a difference there that we need to acknowledge, that there is an evolution of what you're talking about and what you're talking about.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah. Comments, there's one here.
That is the perfect time to speak, actually, whoever just spoke about the evolution. Hi, everyone. I'm a UGC creator. So we're talking more about just big creators that have reach. We're talking about normal people like me who don't have a huge following, only 5K. So she's a nano influencer babe who loves the hot girl war. There are people like us who are just normal people and are being trusted by big brands like Bumble and Boots and who are not just, lying to get to the bag. So I think the conversation needs to turn from just big influencers to normal people, because we exist as well. We're not causing riots or doing anything controversial.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Agree.
Is there anyone on this side that wants to ask a question? Yeah.
Okay. Oh, no.
I also just wanted to add that I think it's very different on the B2B side as well. I think we've talked quite heavily on the B2C side, but on the B2B side, these are people who are really subject matter experts within their field, consultants, they're even doctors within, the medical industry. So these are people who know their craft inside out. So it's not a lipstick that they're pushing or, kind of the B2C brand products themselves, but actually they're really heavily linked to the products and the solutions that they're talking about on social media. So I think there's also an important distinction between the two there as well.
Those people exist in advertising and marketing as well, just saying. Okay, anyone else? And we're going to wrap up to closing arguments. Oh, one over here, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, hi there, my name's Nafiz. We've got a food brand that we set up called Curry Bay. It's an Indian food brand, it's a couple of years old. When we started about 3 or 4 years ago, we had a lot of influencers that wanted to come and promote our brand. We were quite hesitant on that at the beginning because we didn't know what value we would get from that. You know, is it a free meal? Is it a few £100 just to put a poster eating at a restaurant? Could any of you help me create a strategy in terms of influencer content creation around our brand? We now cater for various different corporates. We were at Glastonbury Festival last year. We have a restaurant space in Kew Gardens. So yeah, we just want to have a starting point and then build on that.
That's wonderful, sir. Okay, we're going to wrap up there. We're going to have closing arguments, and then we're going to do a final vote. So please, Sabrina, you have 1 minute.
Woo! Right. Listen, guys, I have tried every diet out there, right? Keto, fasting. I even once convinced myself that eating 5 Freddos for lunch was fine because it equated to the same calories as a jacket potato. My point is that every time it was the same cycle. I had a quick rush, then a crash, and then a realization that I wasn't actually building my health. I was just chasing short-term results. And eventually I had to accept the truth, that there were no shortcuts. I had to eat my damn vegetables. Influencer marketing has the tendency to become our industry's crash diet if we don't use them in the right way. A fast, addictive way to chase engagement and relevance. It felt great at first, but then came the side effects, the vanity metrics, the lost brand control, and scandals that sent us scrambling. The problem isn't influencers. That's not what we're debating. Just like a little sugar in your diet isn't the problem. It's thinking that they can replace the fundamentals. Trusted, regulated, and proven channels are our protein and our fiber. So let's stop trying to cheat the system. Let's use influencers in a regulated way. Let's stop confusing hype with trust. We need to eat our damn vegetables. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Tom, to finish us off.
Okay, very, very quickly. I don't think it's been around for more than 15 years in a professional capacity, so I think it's not quite a crash fad diet. I think we're past the diet phase. Very quickly, I think, look, personalization is the future of advertising. Influencers drive innovation. They drive impact. We've covered it through all of the case studies that Raoul kindly explained. I'm sure that there are plenty more. All of your screen time will demonstrate just how valuable a channel that this is and should be. And that's it from our side. Thanks.
That's it. Okay, final votes. Final votes. Do you agree with the motion or not? Are influencers too influential? Oh. We haven't got time to do a proper count, but that looks 50-50-ish. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. If anything, we've learned a lot. Thank you so much.